Xin chào everybody, my name is Viet and welcome back to another video. I just got back from another strip at rice climbing, and in this week's video I wanted to talk about what it means to build a pyramid in climbing. But first of all, I wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone who watched my last video, and we did hit 100 subscribers, so thank you to everyone who subscribed. And yeah, if you haven't already, please subscribe and like the video. Anyways, normally on Monday, as you may know, I have my volume sessions, and typically that would look like me going through the grades from V1 to V3 at rice climbing. But for this week, I decided to go to Stratford. You may know that I went to Allgate a couple weeks ago, and Stratford is in the same like brand or company, City Bouldering. And I think the grading here is slightly easier than rice climbing, so that's why I'm doing the V4s. And the goal of this session was to flash most of the V4s here and work my technique really. But the main focus was really to, like take care of my first attempt of a climb. Because normally I feel like when I'm climbing at a rise, or when I'm climbing something like close to my limit, in the back of my mind, I'm always like doubting myself that I can do this first try. I typically get onto a climb, I feel the holds, and I expect to fall off. But as you can see on this pink V4, even though I got the beta wrong, I still wanted to complete the climb. And that's a mentality shift that I need to implement more in my climbing. So yeah, I feel like in climbing, a lot of people really like to, look at the grades and sort of base their success or their progress on the grade. And I know there is obviously like real merit in that. And getting my first V6 and stuff like that was really good. But the way that I want to move forward, especially in the summer since I have so much time, is to continue to improve like the base of my climbing, or the foundations of my climbing. And a way to do that is to get better at V4s and get better at the lower grades. So I've written down here that I've almost done 100 V4s and roughly 30 V5s and only a handful of V6s. So obviously the first goal is just to keep doing V4s and keep doing V5s. And I'm not really picky in what I climb. It's more just trying to apply the techniques that I've learned over these past 2 years and make sure that I'm able to flash, or at least, do the climbs in the least amount of attempts as possible. But yeah, in order to really make progress in climbing, I don't think it's, it doesn't make any sense for me to now start doing V7s or like try and project some V8s or stuff that isn't really in my reach yet. And I was watching a podcast somewhere, and there was this climber who was doing like V11s and V12s, and he wasn't really pacing himself, I'd say is the right word. I think in climbing you kind of have to let go of your ego and sort of just be humble. And I know that I'm capable of doing basically every V4 in most London gyms, but I think there's a lot of value in me going back and doing these slightly easier climbs. So rather than building a skyscraper, as I think that was the term that was used, you sort of have to build up your layers. So you can't like do a V7 without doing a set amount of V6s, for example. And that's a thing that I really took to heart. So as you can see this week, I was trying a lot of V4s, I was getting those numbers up, but also trying V5s. And this yellow V5 on screen was fairly cryptic. I wasn't too sure what the that hold is next to the start hold, like what the use of it was. On my flash attempt, I tried to toe hook it, but I think my body was too scrunched up, so I couldn't make good use of it. But yeah, I was able to work through the rest of it and piece it together. Also, I just wanted to mention before I forget, the new set at Rice Climbing for this week, the week that this video comes out, I think Jim Pope is going to be there, and I think he's setting the slabs section, so that'd be really cool. And I'll definitely be climbing a lot of slab next week for sure. Anyways, in my personal opinion, I feel like V5s at Stratford are slightly soft. The holds are quite juggy in my opinion, and unlike Rice Climbing, where I think a V5 is more sustained, is the right word I think. The climbs at Stratford are really like one movers, or like there's one particular move that makes a climb that grade. So yeah, I would take these grades with a pinch of salt. Anyways, after doing those V4s and a couple of V5s, my skin was getting slightly worse, and it was a really hot day, so I didn't want to overwork myself too much. So this purple V5 is the last boulder that I attempted, and it's similar to one of the V5s at Rise. So I sort of, wanted a little bit of a confidence boost. And the main theme of this boulder was this heel hook, which basically lets you do all the moves. But yeah, I feel like now that I'm getting really confident with V4s, especially at Rice Climbing, I feel like I can start working on slightly harder stuff. In my opinion, I think the V4s and V5s at Rice Climbing are fairly close together. Like the gap between the two grades aren't too steep, but then the jump from V5 to V6 is like extremely big. So yeah, my projects for this week, which you'll see later, was the purple V5 and the black V5, this climb. And I was climbing with Josh, and I really wanted to flash this climb, and I was watching a couple reels like of just people climbing this, and their beta was slightly different from mine, but I gave it a go with this swap foot, and I didn't feel comfortable, so I had a little bit of a rest, and then I decided that I'm just going to go for a toe hook and heel hook method. As you can see, my toe is letting me move up to these holds, and even though my heel hook pops there, I can still, get back to it. And then I throw in a second heel hook, which lets me do this final move, which was slightly risky, but yeah. So one of my projects already down, and it's Tuesday. I was feeling really psyched, and the new set at Rise was really good. So yeah, I feel like this was the perfect way to start my week. And as you can see, I just fell off this new V4. It's sort of similar to the black V4 that I didn't give enough attempts on, so I'll definitely be working that a lot more. Another climb that looked really interesting was this V4 Plus, and I think it's meant to be like a double clutch dyno, or at the very least you just dyno. But I was feeling the move out, and I think I was able to just do it statically, or like do the move sort of semi-statically with the right foot still on the hold. Yeah. And then the second half of the climb, I feel like the pinch that I'm grabbing right now, from the floor it looks much better, but when I'm climbing I feel like there's not enough friction, and you sort of have to try hard more than you'd like to. And yeah, I completely missed that crimp. But that wasn't really the main focus of that session. It was more to do this black V5. And as you can see, I'm wearing my Cubits, which are my newest shoes, and also the only shoes that I didn't downsize on. I think the size 46, which is also my like regular shoe size. And uh, I saw Patrick here today, one of my strong friends at Rice Liming, and I was trying to get some beta off him, and he told me that I should either try this like paddle, I suppose, with a tow hook, and like looking back at the footage, I was fairly close, but it didn't really feel that close in like me doing it. But I did give it a couple tries. But the real beta that I wanted to try was a heel hook method, where I just basically like sit on my left heel hook on that big hold, and then gassed on to the last move. So I think with V5s at Rice Climbing, the really important thing that I need to start drilling into my head is learning better micro beta, and in general just like committing to a really good beta rather than, you know, constantly doing the bottom and then just failing on one move. I feel like I need to just focus on a move by move sort of like approach. So yeah, this is technically my day flash attempt from the bottom. And yeah, I took a good rest. I brushed the holds, and I just committed to this heel hook method. And yeah, I'm able to do that climb. So on Tuesday, I was able to do both of my projects, my V5 projects, which, you know, is another step or another layer in my pyramid. And so I took a rest day on Wednesday, and moving into Thursday, I was just testing the waters of the new set. And I saw this V5 Plus, and in my head, it looks like a toe hook and then a match, which then lets me like do a sort of dynamic move to the jug. I didn't get to try the second half, but yeah, I was really trying to work on this toe hook thing. And I feel like every time I tried to place that toe hook, my foot just completely gave way. But before we move on, I would like to talk about some of the projects that I have decided to highlight. First is this black V6 in the sort of cave area. So I'm starting with my left hand on the volume and right hand slightly lower. And in my head, I think it's a right hand to the crimp. Then you get a really high left foot, which then lets you do the left hand move to the block crimp. And then here in my head, I thought it was like a sort of like a back flag where you just sort of bump twice with your right hand. But I did try that a couple times and that didn't really work. But in the second half, I think it's just like an easy left, right to the top. But these crimps are much worse, in my opinion, than the V5 that I just did on Tuesday. And obviously the angle is much worse, so yeah. This is another thing that I really wanted to mention. I feel like when you're picking your projects and what you want to climb, you should definitely have a mix of things that you like, but also things that really target your weaknesses. So this V6 is a perfect example of something that I absolutely am terrible at, which is like a really prolonged crimp line. So as long as you're really psyched and, you know, inspired to do the climb, I think that's all that matters and what really like constitutes as a worthwhile project. Because I don't see a point of me doing a climb which I have absolutely no interest in doing. So yeah, I'm just giving some medium effort attempts. I feel like I don't even think I have the right beta yet to even give some really intense attempts. I'm not sure how to get this right hand crimp. I do think I should try and put my right foot on the volume. But then again, I don't know if I should be full crimping the holds or just like, I don't know if this climb is too far past my limit where I have to full crimp everything, or if it's just a matter of body position. But anyways, a second climb, because I think you should have multiple climbs to work on rather than just like tunnel visioning on one thing, is this green V5. And I know there are two green V5s on this image actually. So we'll just talk through both because I think both are really good projects. First is the dark green in the center of your screen. And this is like my absolute anti-style because it's using the axis holds, which like I just can't like use at all. And it's a fairly slopey climb with decent feet. So that's something that I want to work on. And secondly is the light green, which is a pinch line. So yeah, I that wasn't the climb that I wanted to highlight, but also I think that's a really good project for me as well. And it's a good mix of holds, so I'm not like overworking my fingers, for example. And I do give it some attempts. Initially, I was thinking that I had to do another heel hook on the foot on the right volume, but it's really hard to start this climb. It's like, I don't know, maybe the hands are slightly too low or the foot is slightly too high. And so it makes it the start position really awkward to get into. And for this upper section, I was really debating between just going for the higher holds or like trying to work my feet up. But I think in the future I might just match that right hand hold and then bump up rather than like doing any like high feet. And lastly, from the new set, I really want to try this V5 Plus Black. It's a really fingery and crimpy line as well. So it starts on the right, and there's a bunch of holds on that volume for your feet, which I sort of haven't really figured out my beta yet. The middle section is really hard, and I think in general, like each move is sort of on my limit because it's quite reachy from like terrible crimps to monos and stuff like that. So yeah, I think for some reason I'm closer to doing this V5 Plus than the Axis Green. It might just be that this is slightly more my style. So here I was trying to do this like crossover move and I couldn't fit my fingers in, but I kept trying it, and I think that was one of my biggest mistakes of this session. Today when I was waiting to do the strip, I saw a climber bump. So when they got their left hand on the jib, they flipped it, and then that let them move closer or like shift their body weight closer to the left. But yeah, I also wanted to put this V4 Plus down, definitely, because you know, as well as having those projects which are working on my weaknesses, I think a really important thing in climbing is also having fun. And this really dynamic and like straightforward climb was something that I really liked, and I really wanted to do it today because I think in my head Friday was going to be a board session, and then I didn't think I would have climbed on Saturday, but as you'll see late in the video, I end up climbing on Saturday but not at rise climbing. So I was really trying to make my attempts really count, and as you can see, I'm finally able to do that move, and I'm working myself slightly higher on this pinch. And unlike last attempt where I just put my right foot and then foot swap, as you can see there, I tried to do a like really weird like hop over, and yeah, that really annoyed me. But I was really determined to do this climb, but I knew that, I don't know, it was nearing the end of my session, and I was sort of losing that juice that I need to hold on to those holds. But moving on to my workout, something new that I'm trying to implement on my finger strength days are these rows, I suppose, like the rowing motion. I think as well as targeting my back, it also really puts a lot of emphasis on my fingers, especially since I'm going to be rotating between 25 mil and 15 mil. I forgot who I saw. I think it was a Mad Rock video or like a short, and it was like how to train like a pro. And one of the exercises was this like rowing motion. So it's something that I'm definitely going to keep working on. I don't know how much weight I should be doing. I think on screen that's like 22 kg. I don't know if I should be like working on at a higher amount or if this is sufficient. But yeah, another thing that I would like to talk about was just climb more, really. Back in the day, so like 2 years ago, I suppose, when I first started climbing, I was really nervous and I hated falling in front of people. So when I was at Rise Climbing, and since Rise Climbing is a fairly small gym, and like everyone can see everyone basically, I was really shy to like try some hard things or even like easier grades in fear that I would fall in front of everyone and like embarrass myself. But as I've gotten older and as I've climbed a lot more, I just think you should ignore that stuff. Like at the end of the day, everyone else, if they are thinking bad things, I think that's just like really weird, anyways. But other people's opinions are really just background noise, and when you climb, it should really just be you and yourself, and it's you that's climbing, and all you have to think about when you climb is the holds in front of you and doing a move by move sort of mentality rather than constantly looking back, making sure that no one's looking at you or being scared that you're gonna fall off. So yeah, I've really wanted to share that since I think that's something that I'm gonna be doing a lot more since I'm starting to work a bit at rise climbing and I'm sort of becoming a bigger like voice in the ecosystem at rise climbing. I just want to feel comfortable and make other people feel comfortable. And yeah, at the end of this session, I decided to do a 1K rowing session. I had no idea like what time I should aim for or like how hard I should be trying. So I just tried to keep like decent form, and I ended up doing like a 4-minute 40 something. I don't know. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing that rowing sprint once a week. I think that's really good. I think it's good for a couple of reasons. One thing, I think it's really good mentally. Having that little like discipline to just push through hard things and hard workouts. I think secondly, obviously it's quite good for like my back, and rowing is quite a full body workout. So yeah. Also, one thing that I really just want to mention, I've been seeing a lot of progress recently in my workouts and in my climbing especially. So for example, a couple weeks ago, I wasn't even able to hang like one arm like for that long. But as you can see here, I'm not really using the resistance band. And for my like weighted workouts, which I don't really film anymore, I'm able to use like higher and higher kg, which is really nice, being able to document my journey and having you guys watch. So moving on to Friday, I wanted to just warm up real quick on this V2 yellow, which I was actually not able to start like a couple of days ago. Maybe I was just like being silly and I didn't really start it correctly. But the goal of this session was definitely this B4 plus. and I really, really wanted to flash it. So yeah, you can see I'm just trying that little bit extra because I think at the end of the day, sometimes when you think you're not strong enough to do the climb, it's just like that extra 1% that you need to unlock in yourself. And so here you see I'm doing that foot swap, which lets me do this upper section fairly easily. And yeah, that is another project ticked off. And then me and Josh moved onto the board. I feel like I've done quite a lot on this board. And so yeah, I'm sort of moving on to the slightly harder stuff, such as this like crimpy white hold. I don't know what brand that hold is, but one thing that I noticed was it was so far left that if I'm trying to jump off my right foot, I'm almost like banging my foot into the wire or even into the pillar. So I think maybe I just have the wrong beta, but yeah, it's good to also, you know, establish a couple projects on the board, because sometimes I do realize that rise climbing is fairly small, and like obviously I can flash all the easier grades and then I'm left for like a couple of weeks just doing the same things over and over. So having this board is really refreshing. And I think another compliment that I'd like to give to Rise is that typically at most gyms, you either have one or the other. You either have really good sets or you have a really fun board. For example, I know there's a kilter board at Stratford, but I'm really more interested in like the boards that are set and have like set boulders. I think that's more worth my time than kilter board. And then so yeah, comparing that to Surrey Keys, which is the gym that I go to on my Saturday session, I think the routing there is like, it's okay, but really I'm really there for the board. So yeah, I'm just thankful to have both at Rice Slamming. So yeah, I tried my projects a couple more times on Friday. I wasn't feeling the best, and as you see, I'm swapping between my flagships and my cubits. I feel like unless if it's a really foot intense and like I need to be really, really precise with my feet, I don't think I need to be wearing my cubits. And I'm going to be saving those shoes for any outdoor bouldering sessions that I may have. So here we are at Surrey Keys at the arch climbing. Hot take, I think this is one of the better gyms in London, maybe. I honestly prefer it over Bermondsey. Maybe because the holds are quite nice. But yeah, I also wanted to take this day slightly easier, so I was also coming in with the thinking that I should be flashing all the V4s. And then yeah, I didn't want to try like anything else to sort of avoid the same problem that I had at mirror climbing, where I was trying too many of the commercial boulders and I couldn't like work on my board projects. So yeah, here I'm doing this really nice V4 blue. The holds are fairly decent. You just have to like move through them quite quickly. And this yellow V4 is really nice. It was actually, I think, one of the harder V4s because the crimps are really sharp. And yeah, initially I thought I would have to do this foot swap, but I just bumped instead. And then yeah, after that match isn't too hard. Another thing that I want to really talk about is that when you go to a new gym, it's quite daunting. Or not even a new gym, but like even a new like completely new resetted gym, such as me going to Stratford or Surrey Keys. I don't place like so much pressure on me doing every single V4 or doing a set number of climbs. I sort of just find what is really unique and what I think is fun. And that V4 with the volumes was one of the climbs that I just like. I've never done anything like that, so I wanted to give that a good shot. And now moving on to my favorite section of the video, the board climbing section. And thankfully, this board is on the Stoked app, so I was able to make a couple climbs. The first climb I'm doing is this dynamic V3. I've graded I've graded these climbs, and I know I suppose you can take it with a bit of with a pinch of salt, because firstly, the board is fairly easy, I would say. I think it's one of the easier boards in London, so grading is quite hard. And as you can see, it's not as steep as the one at Rise. I don't know if it's like as vertical as the one in Warwick. I think it's like in between 30 degrees. And these are the boulders that I have like climbed like a couple months ago before I went to uni. And the really amazing thing was I didn't expect to flush any of these, but as you can see, I'm feeling much lighter, and I feel like my dynamic bone in my body has really improved in the last year. And I came here with my family, and my dad was like saying how much lighter I looked and how much smoother the moves are looking. So that was really quite nice. In terms of grading, the only reason why I think there's a difference between my V3 and my V4 is that the V4s are slightly more committing, and I think the feet in a V3 is like slightly easier. As you may notice, I'm really using a lot these like yellow edges in the middle of the board, either as hands or feet. I don't know if that's a bad thing, but if they were replaced with like jibs, I think the boulders would still be sort of the same level. But moving on to this V3, which I called Wetty. The reason why I called it Wetty was because I kept dry firing off. I mean, not even dry firing, wet firing, I suppose, off that wooden pinch. Upper section was really fun, I think. I really just wanted to have fun boulders that I could like revisit anytime I wanted, which aren't too like physical, but it's more just like exploring moves and doing things that I would often avoid because I think it's too dangerous sometimes on certain walls. But on this board, I think it's just perfect. Onto this V4, which I've named Tiger Driver, after the song and obviously the boxing move. The song from the Gym Legacy album, which just came out. This middle section is one of my favorites that I have made. We have to do this like constant like changing and swapping of hands. And that was one of the boulders which back in the day it took me like a couple months to just get that sequence down. So I was really pleased to flash that. And then moving on to this other V4. This was actually one of the climbs which I've never done before, and a set that I just made on the spot. So you cross your feet through and you find that like crimp line, and you do a really big move into the finish hold, which as you see I had to release my pinky in order to hold. I think it was because it was so far that I wasn't able to like engage my pinky, so I just went for a 3-finger drag. And onto the final climb, which I have called hula hoops, since I'm using those really massive rings up there, as you can see. I haven't actually like sent this climb yet, so I'm just giving it a grade of V5 for now. One thing that I think, if anyone wants to come and climb here and board here, this board really does eat your skin up really quickly. And you might see on my fingers, I'm using like layers and layers of tape. And I think one thing is definitely because the holds are just so sharp. but also the moves that I just like come up with are really intense. So it's hard to have like a really long session here. But yeah, here you see me trying to do this move, and then my tape just falls off my finger, which is quite funny. But the intended is basically a really close compression into the green crimp, and then you're like crimping your way up until you get to that red ring. And then once you get that red ring, you're sort of like dynamically moving over to the multicolored ring. And I haven't figured out the feet yet, but I don't want to. One thing I don't want to do is use those yellow holds. But yeah, that is for another video. If I come back, I don't know if I'll be coming back to Syracuse like in the near future. But anyways, as I was saying, you may notice a slight change in my workout. It's not too different, but the main things I'm doing is I've added that 1K row on Thursday, and the metrics that I'm using for my finger workouts. I used to have them at like 10 reps per set, but I feel like that's way too intense for my fingers and way too prolonged. So I'm reducing those to 6 and 5, and I think that's just gonna prevent injury a lot better. And then something that I've just added is alternate one arms, which is where I'm hanging off like a bar or the Beastmaker with one arm, and then I swap to the other arm, and I'm sort of like canvassing from either arm. I think that's a really good way, like a really good step up from what I've been doing normally, which is just the one arm hangs. Since I think I've like progressed further than that like physical limit. But yeah, the rest of the plan is still the same. I just need to be consistent. I need to build my layers in my pyramid, and yeah, I just really want to keep enjoying my climbing. And if anyone is in or around London, I'd highly recommend going to Rise Climbing uh, next week, since it is being set by Jim Pope, I believe. And I think he's doing a workshop as well, which is really cool. And hopefully, I might bump into him. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy your summer and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.